Alrighty, I think that's the right amount of time to wait between the countdown and when we go live. One of these weeks, I will fully understand how to count down from five and miss numbers in between. Until then, this is episode 24. Jack Bauer would likely approve for those 24 fans out there. I'm John, taking us into the adventures of close encounters of the tech kind. You're listening to us. This is November 7th, 2024. And it's been a week or two since we've been live. So I think all of us have to kind of like shake off and uh, get our streaming seats back on us. So, yeah, welcome to our conversation. We're just going to talk about some tech happenings that are going on in the world and share our thoughts and opinions on subjects, kind of change up our format a little bit. But without further ado, I'm going to pass it off to Jackson.
Hey everybody, my name's Jackson. Yeah, it's been a couple weeks since we've done a stream between people getting sick, holidays, so glad to be back.
Or sick of holidays.
Or right.
Take a holiday from being sick.
Artie, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
I'm Marty. I'm the reason that we did not have an episode a couple weeks ago. I came down with COVID, so I'm recovering. If you cannot tell from my voice, um, yeah. So welcome in, Mike.
Hey everybody, good to be here. Last week I was sitting at home for Halloween, and it was the first time for me to actually sit at home and not take the kids out. My kids are getting older now that I was just able to send them out by themselves, and they came back with 9 pounds of candy.
Wow.
So there we
How
go, and
much of
we've
it
been
did you take?
slowly uh we collect on a recurring, like, as long as the candy's still in the house, we take a percentage as tax. It's
Your
like a
tag,
it's like a candy housing tax. Like, for us to keep your candy here in this house, we have to tax your candy.
your
Uh, uh,
taxes
uh,
compounded daily.
something
That's
something
awesome.
like that. The problem is, though, is that once all the good candy's gone, there's just no desire to keep taxing it. So there you go. Yeah,
Oh
great to be
man.
here. We got a great show today, so I'm excited to talk about the things that have been going on the last few weeks.
There's been a few. And one that caught my attention, Google got in trouble with Russia. Did you guys hear about
Uh-oh.
that?
What they
No,
do
that just
now?
sounds funny though. Google's in
Yeah,
trouble with
so
Russia.
so the company extended a branch out into Russia. I found out was actually uh, they declared bankruptcy last year, 2 years ago. They uh, Google stopped streaming some of the news websites. The news organizations that were stopped sued and won in court. The court levied a fine against Google. So, okay, Jackson, if I gave you a penny a day or $1 million, let's say it a different way, $1 million cash, or a penny doubled every day for a month. So day one, I give you a penny. Day two, I give you 2 pennies. Day three, I give you 4 pennies. And
What's
so
2 to the
doubles.
30th? I don't know.
Which would you rather take, $1 million or the penny doubled every day?
I'm pretty sure the penny doubled will get you a decent chunk of change.
It's way more than $1 million.
Yeah. What is 2 to the 30th? Let's find out.
Well, it's not just that, but it's 2 to the 30 plus 2 to the 29th plus 2 to the 28th plus 2 to the 27th.
Oh, you're right.
So it's
Yeah,
additive.
yeah. I
So
need to
that's
take
what
my
Google's up
accounting
against.
class.
They were fined $100,000 a day. And the next week the fine doubled. And the next week the fine doubled from that. And the next week the fine doubled from that. Apparently, and I have trouble pronouncing, it's like $2 decillion. It's a number two followed by 34 zeros.
Oh my gosh.
Somebody said it's a trillion dollars.
Can I just have 6 of those zeros?
I'd be happy with three.
I'd like a few of those zeros with a larger number in front of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it turns out it's more cash than the world has.
So Google owes this money to the news sites in Russia,
No, it's a
Or the
fine from the
government.
Russian government.
from the
The
Russian
government.
government.
Hmm.
So that's see, that's kind of crazy. Like, are they're just gonna ignore it, right?
Well, and that gets to an interesting point of if the number is ridiculous, is it enforceable? You know, if it's $100,000, great. Yeah, you can enforce that. You can do sanctions. You can shut down. You can do all those things that you do in standard civilized arenas. But when you've got a shutdown request that says they owe more money than the entire planet has, I mean, it's just you're laughing is correct. Like, what do you do with that?
Well, the other thing, and I don't know how international law works. In my head, I imagine Russia. I mean, because Google doesn't have like a home base in Russia, as far as I know. Maybe they do, but
They did.
I'm
They closed
yeah.
it.
Oh, well, makes sense.
Yeah, I wonder why.
So then, like, Russia can't just come over to the United States and arrest CEO of Google. So I mean, I assume Russia has to communicate with the U.S. and then if the U.S. is willing to comply, then the U.S. will then go prosecute or whatever, or show up at his house and arrest him. But I mean, it's not. As far as I know, the U.S. and Russia aren't particularly on the best terms anyway. So I mean, it's kind of just pointless, and you can't just ban Google. Maybe they will. I don't know.
It'd be tough. I mean, Google's got one heck of a position in the world.
Which is kind of crazy. Like, is it too much to say that Google's more powerful than a government at this point? If they can just do that.
I think they're more useful than a government.
Yeah.
I mean,
Certainly a heck of a lot faster.
oh my goodness. Yeah, I mean, a government gives us rules and regulations. Google facilitates communications and commerce.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you can't have one without the other, effectively. At least today in the information's. Oh, I'm spacing out. Is it the information age?
I don't know.
I think so. That was the last I heard. It was still the information age.
I'll
AI
check.
hasn't taken it away from us.
Unless somebody changed it and didn't tell me. They
This is
didn't
the
provide
age
the
of Skynet.
information, so
It's the age of Skynet.
oh dear.
Not yet self-conscious, but hey, just a couple days away.
Oh, we lose a mic.
Well, I thought that was a funny joke, but okay. Skynet heard me.
Well, while he's reconnecting, I was thinking, I wonder if the way Russia can kind of fight against that is if they block payments, right? Because that's Google is encouraged or driven by money, right? So I mean, if
Shut off all ad revenue.
yeah, they cut off well, yeah, I'm not sure how exactly they would do that, but I mean, if people are paying for Google services, right, like Google Drive or their cloud or whatever, theoretically, they could just cut off all ties from Russian banking to US banking so that they can't get their money across, and then maybe Google will start listening a little bit, right? I don't know.
Yeah, I think with the Russia-U.S. split, I don't want to call it the conflict that Russia started, but I think that whole thing, Russia kind of circled the wagons and cut themselves off from the rest of the world as far as the internet's concerned.
Mm-hmm.
Did you hear they were trying to make their own IP,
I
their
think we
internet
mentioned
protocol?
it Oh, I don't know. I think we might have mentioned it, did we?
I vaguely recall we talked about it here, but yeah, they were dabbling in the idea of replacing IP4 and IP6 with their own interneting protocol,
What for? Just so no one else can access it?
so they can run isolated from the rest of the world.
Yeah.
But there's just so much age and maturity in the IP4 segment. Welcome back, Mike.
So,
That
to
was weird.
answer the question, we are technically in the post information age called the Fourth Industrial Revolution.
The fourth.
That sounds just like they're getting lazy at this point because the first industrial revolution like was what 1800 something. Like,
Yeah.
oh come on, guys, come up with a new name.
Well, the information age was technically the third industrial revolution. It's basically a shift in how industry is functioned.
Yeah. I think historians are getting lazy.
Well, I mean, AI is only about a year and a half old, so
True.
people
It's
that
not even
name these things.
AI.
Well, I mean, it's
Also
going to
true.
be the next wave will be the AI revolution. So once computer intelligence gets to the point of being actually intelligent, not curtailed by us meager humans, it's going to be frightening.
If you mean Ultron,
Simulated.
just say Ultron.
Yeah,
I just
we don't
watched
need
that
that.
recently.
I haven't seen that in a long time.
Spends 15 seconds on the internet, decides humanity has to die.
We actually watched Eagle Eye recently. My wife and I did. That's one of her favorites.
Eagle
That
Eye.
was
I've
a
never
fun
heard of
one.
that one.
Oh, Jackson,
Am I
you need to
just so?
go.
Oh, it's
Come on, write it down
2008.
on your list.
All right, all right, all right. Hold on. What?
Which one? There are multiple.
You know,
The
by the
one of all
time
the movies that we're telling him he should need to go watch.
No.
you know,
Which Eagle Eye?
Oh, uh,
There's one in 2008. Is it that one or is it older?
I
Shia
think it's
LaBeouf?
that one. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, if it's Shia LaBeouf, I
2008.
can get behind that.
worth it.
You guys ever heard the song Shia LaBeouf?
Yes.
I have heard that there is such a thing. I've never heard the song though.
It's worth a good listen.
Hmm.
Artie, do you agree with that? Is it worth listening to?
It's comical. It's very amusing.
That's not
is.
the question I asked.
What is comedy not worthwhile to you?
It's worth listening to. It's actually a very enjoyable song.
Thank you,
Comedy is
Artie.
worth listening to. It's just, is it the right kind of comedy?
I mean, there's a children's choir involved.
Oh
I
wow.
forgot about that. Oh, they put some effort into this song for real.
All
Yeah.
right, I'll have to check that one out. But we're still adding more hours to Jackson's life of TV viewing and movie viewing than
I still
he's
haven't
adding on
started.
ours.
I know. I still have not started. Oh my gosh, school work. It's all takes up all my time. But I have a list. There is a list, and eventually it will get started. Perhaps over the summer. That'll be easier.
The list always
Hopefully.
grows.
Mhm.
Yeah, in the next 6 months. So we're almost to 26, and given that we've had a couple sick days and holidays, I think we've been doing this for half a year. So in another half year, Jackson will have enough videos that you could sit down for 3 months without sleep and watch them solid straight.
Is that so?
He's
By the
like,
time
oh
we get done
boy.
recommending movies for you, yeah.
Well, if we assign you One Piece, then that will be, us 3 months straight just for that.
Oh, I
True.
see what you're saying. I thought you were saying about the podcast. I was like, I don't think that's enough hours to fill an entire month. No, but you're right.
Depends how long we stretch these podcasts out.
I know, right?
Could do the long form 3-hour Joe Rogan format.
I think what helps him is he's always got a guest on.
And none of you smoke.
Yeah.
You do? I mean, you sound like you do right now, but
No, I just eat cigarettes.
Oh man,
they
my
help you with it.
yeah, my dad, his oh, he used to work with a guy that used to work on Apollo missions. I think his name was like Joe, good old Joe. You know, he's talking about how he's like 80 years old and he's a fire investigator or, a forensics, right? And so, he's a brilliant guy, this guy he used to work with and um he's just knows everything there is to know about physics and fires and all this stuff. Anyway, eventually my dad discovers that he will just chew on cigars. He doesn't smoke them anymore because his wife forced him to stop smoking cigars. But he will. My dad said you'll see him and he'll have a cigar in his mouth. If you go back an hour later, it'll be half gone, or he'll just be nibbling on the end of it. And he'll just sit there and eat a cigar. It's just so funny to me.
I don't think that's how chewing tobacco works, but okay, sure.
Why not?
From what I've learned, that's actually probably healthier than chewing tobacco.
It probably is.
Or smoking it.
Yeah,
It's the least harmful way of, shall we say, consuming a cigar.
Hmm.
Never thought of it that way. Still not going to do it.
Teach their own, right?
True. And I will not eat a cigar. Just call it not on my bucket list.
it's got barbecue sauce.
Mm-mm.
For a half second, my mind went, "Oh, that sounds good," and then I remembered it was a cigar.
Yeah, I'll just lick the barbecue sauce off and
Come on,
So
it's a
none of
nice
that.
smoky barbecue sauce.
oh dear.
Ooh.
Oh, golly. Well, I like the fact that we got some good dad joke puns going here. This is awesome.
So Google's not going to pay Russia,
Uh,
huh?
yeah, it's a safe bet.
Yeah. I was thinking what they could do is they could pull the trick of, fine, you want me to pay you? I'll pay you $1,000 installments in pennies or something like that. Just every month,
Pay
just
them
ship
in,
like a van
pay them
load
in
of
crypto.
pennies. Yeah, there you go.
This is the Google coin. It is worth $2 decillion right now. Oh, sorry, the market just collapsed.
Right.
That's crazy.
I mean, let's be honest. Would you pay Russia?
No.
Yeah.
Depends what I got from it. Now, if it's a fine, no, I'm not going to pay a fine to Russia. But I mean, if I'm buying something, maybe.
You will get yourself a nice third-story window.
Just the window.
Maybe a small trip through it.
That's what I was thinking.
I'll take the window instead. I don't want to trip through it. Okay, so there's a dead spot in our conversation. Jackson, what have you heard in the news lately? It's been 3 weeks.
I
I'm
know it's
sure we
been a
got a
minute.
thing.
You know, AI, 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 AI. There,
AI.
uh, an AI framework called Llama, whose mascot is a llama, um, had I think 6 CVEs. No, I think I lied. 1, 2, 3, 4 CVEs with 2 additional vulnerabilities noticed, but no CVE yet. So what it is essentially it's a large language model that an AP not an API, but essentially it can be installed on Windows, Linux, a lot of things are based on it. And basically, they've had several vulnerabilities, some of which have been shown to allow an API to create an endpoint or determine the existence of a file on the server. Some of these other CVEs are reading out of bounds, causes applications to crash, or even it could be the source of a DOS, a DOS attack. So lots of interesting things to think about here. As we have all these new tools. There are little holes that come with them.
Sounds like it was a rush to push it out.
I think
Yeah.
all large language module like being. I think all of them are like that, right? Just don't fix it, ship it, and then fix it when we find a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that just the methodology for most programs these days? They instead of testing it in their offices with beta testers and whatnot, they just ship it out and wait for the bug reports to come from people, the users
But
using them to beta test.
there's a difference between bugs of the software not functioning and gaps in security where somebody else is going to exploit it and take down a business or something like that. I would at least think that um, there'd be some kind of protection, you know, screen for protection at least first. If it generally looks good, then let it out. And then if you find something later, then fix it. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can't. It kind of like goes back to there was that flaw that we talked about a couple months ago where the development keys were left in on, was it SSH or something like that?
No, BIOS.
And oh yeah, in BIOS, that's right, in
Mhm.
BIOS. And it was like, and basically they were tagged like, do not use these in production. Like it says so right there, do not ship these in production. Like, and they left them in anyway, and people who knew them got a hold of them and exploited the systems. So it's like you got to do at least your bare minimum to not do stupid things.
Well, it is possible to code without bugs. I mean, you can write slow, methodical, very specific code, but that's not fast and efficient. That doesn't get a product to market quick.
Well, and anymore, if you're doing your job, I don't know if I want to say right, but in the perfect world, that as a developer, you should be creating modules. Like, I need a thing to do this. Well, I write it for this one program, and then later on, I come across another request for something that has the same feature. Like, well, I've already got this chunk of code that is tested and works. I can just drop that in and build around that. So, and I think in a perfect world, that's what we like to think that is happening, that we have all these different libraries and modules that are tested and vetted and approved and secure and this and that, so that someone can just grab something off the shelf, use it, get their product out quick, and that's where we see a lot of these vulnerabilities come from. It's not necessarily the software itself, it's because there's a vulnerability in the library that is used by this software or this service or whatever it is. And so, then there's a patch, and then we have to make sure, okay, well, when we install the software, we have to make sure it installs the newest version of the different libraries and dependencies and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Talking about coding securely or coding without bugs. It was funny. I was in one of my campus classes on yesterday. I was in class and we were talking about assembly code and how buffer overflow works and how all these vulnerabilities can be exploited. And so my professor goes to he asked the class, he's like, well, how do we avoid putting bug or how do we avoid these vulnerabilities? and someone just goes, "Don't code," and we all get a good chuckle out of that because really, I mean, it's just coding is such a complicated, and there's so many, like you were saying, there's so many puzzle pieces that get put together. Hard to keep up with all of them and make sure that each one is functioning as it should. But ideally, that's what you do, right? You build a specific package or just a specific almost like if you think of it mechanically, like it's just one gear. Like make sure that gear works. It has all the teeth it needs, no more, no less, and it's bolted on tight. Ideally, that's what you do. But I mean, when you get into programs that are across, hundreds of files and, thousands upon thousands of lines of code, it is all too easy to have a loose bolt here or there that can be easily exploited.
I think of it too that I would think that in some cases it could be also because you have you have a program or an app or widget that does a certain set of things, and it's when somebody decides, well, I want it to also do this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why can't it do this? And my answer would be because nobody's needed it before, and that could be a security vulnerability. But I really, really, really want it to be able to do this. And sometimes the need to have a certain function overrides the common sense of security. I can't think of any examples right off where that would be the case, but I've gotten that
Putting a
feeling
block,
because I've what's
putting a
that?
block in a door so that you can get back into the building, so the door doesn't lock behind you.
Yeah. Yeah, like making another login that's separate from the main login, give us a backdoor, give us this kind of thing so that we can access this data. And it just increases the footprint of the attack surface for an attacker to get in. It's like, oh, well, if I can't get in through the main door, maybe there's a back door. How many back doors have we heard about, where that's been a vulnerability, so it's when there's people that they really want something, they think it's going to make their life easier, but the problem is when you make your life easier, you make a hacker's life easier too, if
Mm-hmm.
you're not careful. So I it's a tough call. It's one of those things where, yeah, the speed of commerce and capitalism, and you want to be the guy to get your product out first and be the number one and the best and get all those sales, and there's no time to test it and thoroughly vet it and make sure that it's secure and everything. And it's a
So,
gamble, and a lot of those people, they're gambling people. Like, I'm going to gamble that this is going to work, and I'm going to gamble the fact that it's not going to be exploited. And some people lose, and an exploit happens, and now they're responsible for millions of dollars lost.
so there's one. So I'm a big fan of Steve Gibson. I've mentioned him on this podcast a couple times. One of the ones I saw recently just rise in the charts and other YouTube channels and commentary. Spinright 6.1 has been released.
Mm,
In his podcast, he kind of documented the process of what he does to test this thing. So he doesn't need money. He's got
mhm,
enough revenue going through things. He just spends time coding and making the world a better place. And this tool does hard drive and solid state drive recovery, and it does it really,
mhm,
really well. Um, but he just went through the whole process. He would actually go buy legacy motherboards and legacy hard drives to watch them fail or work, depending on what his scenario was. He sent it out to a whole fleet of people doing beta tests. I think he had at some point like 1,600 people working on the project, contributing feedback, saying, "Hey, what about this?" So like AMI BIOS on a 486 motherboard from 1906. Um, it was some really cool stuff to watch him develop the code and run into glitches and talk about the blind assumptions he used to make and code in there, and then have to revisit that because that's what you do. You look at code and you revisit. But have either of you ever played with Spinright?
I've heard of it. I've seen it out there. I've never actually used it or played with it before, though.
It's super cool. So if you got to drive with bad sectors, one of the tools that it has in it, you know how magnetic media works, right?
Hmm.
Jackson, do you know?
Yeah.
So as it's scanning the drive, it'll actually read that magnetic media, store it in RAM, and reapply the bits to the magnetic media. So kind of reinforce the magnetic personality of each bit on the drive. So you've heard of bit decay and bit rot, which are two different things. The decay is when a cell goes from north to south, but gets kind of fuzzy. You know, if you think of like holding a refrigerator magnet a couple inches away from the fridge, it loses its strength. Well, same thing happens inside the hard drives. So by pulling the data off and then reapplying it down, it's like putting that fridge magnet right on the fridge again. It's a strong positive 1 or a 0.
Mm-hmm. It's
It
funny
just
you're
does that.
talking about that. We were actually just going over this in physics. You know how do ferromagnets work, and
Mm-hmm.
heat is kind of the enemy of ferromagnetism, in that when you apply a magnetic field to iron, its own magnetic moments all line up, right? And they line up with that field. But over time, and if you heat that up, they shift and they'll go back to being random, and then you have no magnetic field. And so, yeah, I mean, what you're saying is exactly what happens.
Yeah, and this tool takes that bit decay and can fix it. Now, I'm not saying it's a magic bullet, but I have fixed more than a dozen drives that people couldn't pull data off of with my copy of Spinright 6.0, which, if I remember right, was like 15 years ago, 18 years ago. So it took them that long to get 6.1 out.
It says initial release was 1987,
Wow.
37 years ago.
And it was more necessary then than it was now because it was basically a novel tool. Nobody else had a recovery tool.
Mm-hmm.
It's still one of the best ones out there. But for that bit decay reason, it's not an expressed feature of the software, but you've run it on a solid state drive, it will speed up your drive.
Really?
Oh, really?
It just somehow bangs it into a better performance because it touches every cell.
Hmm.
Now, don't do it all the time because the wear leveling on your drive will just die. You know, you can only touch each cell like 4,000 times or something like that. So it's a really cool tool. I highly recommend checking it out. But I saw that rising on the charts on other channels.
Very interesting. I think it'll continue to be relevant for some time because magnetic media actually hasn't gone away. They're still using it in data centers, and for long-term storage. I mean, they're still developing new tapes. I think last I saw, they had a tape that could store up to, I don't know, 400 terabytes on a single tape, and they're getting faster at reading from them. The biggest vulnerability, or not vulnerability, but the biggest drawback to it is that, say you want to read the end of the tape, well, then you have to wait for the whole thing to unwind to get to it. But
Yeah, linear, that's the problem. I remember when tape used to be like the slowest media out there. And I guess relatively speaking, it probably still is,
I
but
think it is.
it's when you consider how much faster media overall has gotten, you know, it's crazy. It's crazy to think how fast computers process when you really think about what a computer is doing actively. Like, we're all sitting here on our computers right now, connected over the internet and using cameras and video display and everything in real time, near perfect without any glitches or anything. And considering everything the computer has to do to make that happen, plus run the rest of the programs in the background that it needs to run, you
Hmm.
know,
And it only
it's
gets to operate
mind-boggling.
in true or false.
Right. And for some people, it's still never enough. It's like, gosh, this thing needs to be fat. Like, why is this thing so slow? Do you know what it's doing right now? Like,
Here,
Oh man.
let me sit you down with this nice 14.4 baud modem, and you can surf the internet on that.
14.4, you're giving me that much? Wow, that's a lot better than the 1200 I started with. Good grief. I'll take a 14.4 any day.
Well, as you bring that up, Mike, we're always dissatisfied with the speed that we're at right now, right? And uh, as we're talking about what causes these vulnerabilities, and we code bugs. That's the other thing too, is sometimes we have to rethink the whole way we're coming at a problem, right? And
Mhm.
so when you demand more speed or more efficiency, sometimes you have to scrap the entire model you have. You start again, and you like for example, one thing that I remember was in the news several years ago was Intel's processors had a new unit that would actually try and guess where in the code it might need to execute next so that it could be a lot faster and start feeding the
Mhm.
the processing
I
unit
remember.
code.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that. Yeah.
And uh, so someone had exploited that to get it to run a branch of code, and then instead of what happens, it gets to like an if statement. If x is greater than 0, then run this one. So if that's the case, then the processor would go, okay, I'm gonna run the code for if it does and if it doesn't, and then depending on what actually happens when we get there, we'll just take this one branch, right? And so someone exploited it so that it would actually take the wrong branch, and then you could start getting to execute code that it should have never even come across. Um, and so when we rethink things and we end up innovating, there's always a new way to attack as well, right? I mean, if you come with a new way to think into something, people will find a new way to exploit it.
So that's
Mhm.
actually one of the glitches that Intel ran into. They came up with all those wasted compute cycles would actually do other calculations to see what other directions, like a choose your own adventure.
Mm-hmm.
So you throw an equation at it, it solves 17 other variations of that equation, just on the chance that one of those other ones is going to get called next.
Mm.
Somebody figured out that like cryptography information, like the security keys that you hold your data nice and safe,
Mm-hmm.
um, was also being processed too, and you could actually read and recover that information from those what would be orphaned and then later discarded threads.
Mhm.
And so the chip is vulnerable to cryptography hacks, and the only solution is to not do those extra threads.
Well,
Right.
when that came out, I'm looking at the timeline of this. They're called transient execution CPU vulnerabilities.
Yep.
And the first one is recorded in 2017, I think.
Yep.
And it was called Spectre. And as soon as that came out, all the chip manufacturers, not just Intel, they went back and they looked at the structure, and then they released a patch which slowed down all the processors by about 30% because they had to get rid of that new vulnerability. And every year since, there has been a new vulnerability along those lines. And the most recent one that I can think of is the Ret Bleed, which was back in 2022.
Mike, are you running on an Intel processor? Yeah, he'll be back
It's
in a
mad
minute.
at me.
Oh, you dropped
Oh,
out again.
the laptop heard us talking about it.
Oh, maybe Intel's angry. But the
Are
uh,
you
the
are you here to
vulnerabilities
stay, or
are present, and I don't think they're going away. It's just a matter of trying to rein in the different programs that have access to that additional information.
Mhm.
well, and it's one of those things. No matter what you do, somebody's going to try and hack around it to make it do something it's not. So having that predictive execution and having answers to things that shouldn't be asked by the user at the computer, sitting there waiting for that person to just tear down a wall and get that answer, that's a risk. But we're in a society where faster is better and sells computers. It's
I must be asking too much of my computer then.
like there's an old adage: horsepower sells cars, but torque wins races.
Mm,
So if I told you my car has 150 foot-pounds of torque but 400 horse, and somebody else says I've got 500 horse and 100 foot-pounds of torque, 500 is better than 400, right?
horsepower wise, yeah.
Yep. But the torque will win the race.
Unless this is
So
well,
multi-processor, multi-threads, that's the way to go, not predictive execution. But that's just my opinion.
And just for the record, it doesn't matter if you're Intel or AMD. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter which camp you're in. They're both affected by various bugs that come out.
mhm.
I had a bug on a AMD build server that it was dual package quad core processors. One of the fastest servers I've ever put my hands on at that time. And uh, I had the most fascinating response. I was pinging the gateway, and apparently it was a negative number. So my ping was replied faster than when I sent it. There was a glitch between the processors. They weren't synchronizing their time correctly. So one processor sent the ping request, the other one got it back. So my ping time was like 0.00125, and just a big long string of numbers. My ping arrived before it was sent.
That's hilarious.
Time traveling ping.
Yeah. Problem is when you're installing Active Directory on a server that has that kind of events precede cause, it doesn't end well. I should say it doesn't begin well.
Doesn't well.
You logged in before you typed in your password. Wait, what?
It doesn't well end.
Rooting your
Doesn't.
CPU.
It just don't.
It just don't.
Maybe that's the name of our podcast. It just don't. This episode. Maybe next episode.
Just
we're
don't talk about all the things that just don't.
I guess webcams is part of that.
Yeah, every time I've tried to turn the web camera back on, it gets really unhappy. I'm wondering if it's these new updates that just installed that have messed something up. I don't know.
I heard about a update service that they reverse engineer the updates Microsoft puts out, and they're promising to run updates on Windows 10 after Microsoft stops supporting them. Like you can
Really?
buy updates for Windows 2008, Windows 2012 for a number of years past the end of support.
Mhm.
Microsoft just announced that they're going to offer it to enterprise corporations or for home users for $1 amount. But this company does a reverse engineer of what the patches are. Yeah, I think it's like zero patch or something like that. I got to look this up without really saying it too far wrong. But Their patches are like 23 bytes in size.
Oh, that's nothing.
Yeah. And it doesn't commit it to RAM, it commits it to, or to the hard drive, it commits it to RAM. So the runtime is modified, not what's on the disk. It's a weird.
So Windows is is that just them getting money, charging for patches?
Something like that. I think it's they're just maintaining the team that does the development and processing on those, but they don't have a team doing validation on systems anymore. It's all run in an automated farm. They write a bug fix, they write a patch, they run it against a whole bunch of machines to see if it work, and based on that, then it works. They don't have the validation that they used to. It's unfortunate. Zero Patch is the name of the company.
Interesting. Now I wonder if that's. I think isn't that technically against Microsoft terms of service to reverse engineer their code?
Maybe
I think it is.
It's
reverse
the
engineering
reverse
is
engineering aspect of it is usually a legal thing that they put into anybody that buys the product as a you agree not to do this or we can come after you legally, and that's just like been boilerplate since the 80s. But most company, I mean, you look at Xerox. Xerox was the company that introduced the GUI, and Microsoft and Apple both copied that, and they reverse engineered it because they knew how to get in there and mess with things. And a lot of the technology that we've got right now is from reverse engineering. They just won't admit it, because if they admit it, then they're admitting to, breaking what is it, trade laws.
Yeah. Well, these guys, they do it a different way. They don't reverse engineer the fix that is sent out from Microsoft, because that patch is like 150 megabytes or whatever. They'll go into the CVE and say this exploit affects like a buffer overrun of this module. So then they'll figure out what does it take to do that and then fix it.
Gotcha.
So they're fixing the problem by fixing the problem, not taking the code that Microsoft re-releases. So it's a novel approach. They've been doing it for years.
So they're essentially just doing Microsoft's job for them.
Basically.
And
Which I like having an alternative.
Yeah. Are they charging people for those updates?
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. Because if it were just for free, that just seems kind of silly.
Yeah. No, don't give it away. That's a worthy service. Especially if Microsoft says, you know what, we're just not going to support Windows 10 anymore.
Yeah.
Well, there's a couple 100 million computers that will turn into absolute e-waste. If Microsoft says you can't go to 11 because you don't have the right chip on the board, you switch to Linux or throw it in the trash.
Yep.
I'm learning
Throw it in the
Linux right
trash.
now.
That's what I want to do. Throw it in the trash.
Are you on Windows 10, Mike?
Yeah, this is running Windows 10. And
There's
what's
the
really
problem.
interesting is that Discord came back with something about it's still trying to run some kind of update. And I wonder if that's been the problem, but I don't know.
Discord's trying to bring you up to Windows 11.
Yeah.
Discord is
Or-
living up to its name.
Or maybe it's yeah. Maybe it's trying to install Windows Server 2025 on my machine.
That could be. Did you hear
Yeah,
about that one, Jackson?
What?
There was a bug that was reported that you install Windows updates and it was forcing an upgrade to Windows 2025.
From Server 2022. Yeah.
What? That's so
Yeah.
weird.
As I dug into it, the information I saw seemed to think that it was a misclassification of the update. that basically it was tagged wrong or something like that. I don't know.
So
That
so all it takes
or
is modifying the tag and we get a free copy of 2025?
Maybe.
that or your CPU was getting just a little bit too far ahead there.
Yeah.
That could be too. Yeah.
Well, I mean, if Microsoft accidentally patches you up to 2025, do you get to keep it?
Probably, I would think so.
I wonder what the
Because
legalities on that
what
would
are
be.
they gonna do? Like they can't force you to downgrade.
Yeah, they can.
Well, you could keep it. They'll just push another update that causes you to have to register the license or something. I don't know.
Mm,
There was a glitch that was forcing computers to uninstall their patches.
Oops.
Some hackers were using it to force uninstall updates so they could then attack the machine with known vulnerabilities that have already been fixed.
wow,
And there
Gain
was
I'd
no
never heard
way
of
to
that.
fix it.
No way to fix it.
You had to do a full reinstall because
Fun.
the
Crazy.
way that they applied these patches was to make it look like the original patch had been installed over it. So Microsoft is saying, we can't send this to you because it's already been patched.
Yep.
Mm, wow. So what was the entry for that? Just malware virus, and then it.
Forget the initial access. Oh,
Because
Artie,
that's
do you know that?
I believe the original access point was a misconfiguration of the update uh, software on the machine. So, poking and prodding as the hackers tend to do, they find the misconfiguration, they take advantage of it, and send out their own patches that basically, what was it called, downgrade?
Yeah. They're not releasing details on the method they used to trigger that. That's funny.
Probably because it's still a widely used vulnerability that has not
Yeah.
been fixed. And to the viewers out there, that is a common practice. If there is a vulnerability that is known and actively being worked on, companies tend not to let the details be known so that people don't actively exploit it. The flip side of that is that there are people that will report exploits to companies, and the companies will just say, not our problem. And they give them an amount of time to fix the thing, and then they let the exploit be known to the public so that people know to protect themselves or stop using the product. And it's sort of kind of like forcing the company's hand to address the problem.
hmm
Yeah, I'm looking at Bleeping Computers report from August, and they're not saying what the point of entry was. They're just saying it has been demonstrated. And I think that's smart because if you say, "Hey, um, I found the key under the front mat of the house," then everybody else will look there, right?
Oh, there was something like that. There's been things like that where something gets out and a whole bunch so like the masses find out about it and everybody goes to basically abuse it, and then it's like, okay, we gotta shut this down. And then it's a question of whether or not the company goes after the people that exploited the exploit, you know?
Yeah.
Kind of like that hack, and I use quotation marks around that, a few weeks back with the ATMs, people committing bank fraud.
Yeah. No, I think the takeaway from that one is, and maybe we'll just end the podcast on this conversation. Be curious, be paranoid, think things through. Like always just look at what the situation is and say, okay, if I do this, if I go to the ATM, write myself a check for $20,000 and then pull out the cash, think about it. Like the bank will process these transactions tomorrow. This isn't a cash machine. This isn't an infinite money glitch. This is me writing a fraudulent check and then taking the cash and run.
Oh, here's what it was. It was there's a bank suing people who used a TikTok hack to get free money.
Yep.
So it's examples like that it's like, oh yeah, hey, look, you can get free money out by doing this, 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 and this, and so everybody does it, and then now everybody's gonna get sued.
Yeah, TikTok should not propagate those stupid things around.
Yeah.
I mean, that's probably my chief gripe with TikTok is people go to the internet thinking it's a source of everything. All knowledge and truth is contained on the internet. There's no misinformation. There's no, malfeasance. There's no traps to get me. But it's amazing to me that people post crimes on social media, bragging about it just for the social media clout. So you're literally posting Exhibit A.
Right. That's crazy. It's a different world we live in, though, that's for sure. That
Mm-hmm.
I never thought that when I was first interested in computers as a kid, I don't know that I could have ever envisioned, like I had great visions of where computing was going to go, but I don't think that I could have ever envisioned where it's what's come to right now.
What's it going to be in 20 years?
Yeah. It's nuts.
I mean, who'd have thought? You and I, when we were growing up, we had this idea that phones, it's that mythical thing of carrying a computer in your pocket that's connected to the world. Now your
Mhm.
kids lose their minds when you say you have to turn it off and go to bed.
Right.
It's an interesting world we live in.
Remember the
But
teachers
yeah,
saying you're never going to have, you're not going to have a calculator with you all the time. You got something more powerful than a calculator.
yeah, our phones are more powerful than the entire server farm that was used to render Shrek.
Are you saying we could render Shrek on our phones?
Yes. Yes, you can. With the right software. I'm not saying you can like go to the App Store and say download Shrek, Although Jackson, I got an idea.
I was gonna
I have an
say.
idea for an app.
I was gonna say. Sounds sounds like a great business plan you got going on.
AI
Just have to
generated
clear it with
movie.
DreamWorks.
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe you just tell the app to dodge the creativeness just enough. What is it, like 20% change? And you're no longer in violation?
Okay, this is gonna be a real I don't even know, litmus test for how how terrible your YouTube feed is. Um, have any of you ever seen Shrek Retold? Or know what it is? I feel like John knows. Mike, have you ever heard of that? Shrek Retold?
Shrek Retold. I want
Yeah.
to say that I have heard of something about
Yeah,
that, but
if you made it this far
I'm
in
not I'm not a Shrek fan. So I mean, I saw
Ah,
Shrek. I think I saw the second one too, but Shrek is just not a movie that just, I don't know. I don't know why I don't get into that, but
Well,
I just
if you're not a Shrek fan, then
I'm not a Shrek
then
fan.
then I wouldn't hold you to it. But I feel like if you enjoy Shrek and you just feel like watching something really stupid,
Hmm.
you can watch Shrek Retold. It's on YouTube, and it is a fan base. You don't even. I wouldn't even say don't even bother watching the whole thing. The first 20 minutes, they're pretty good.
Just the first 20 minutes.
Just the first 20 minutes are worth it. But if you don't like Shrek, it's probably not even worth your time. But it's
See, I like this trade-off. I give him a 2-hour movie. He just gives me 20 minutes. This is a good trade.
I'm merciful here. No, I wouldn't put you through that. That
Lord of the Rings,
Director's
except
cut.
director's cut.
that's the
Yeah.
only one I'll watch. I'll only watch the well, not director's cut. I'll watch the extended I guess is that the same thing?
Maybe.
I
Artie?
don't remember.
Sorry.
The extended Lord of the Rings versus the
I
director's
think
cut?
the extended version of the Lord of the Rings, I think the entire thing would take you something like 26 hours to get through.
That's what I watch when I watch it. I don't do the cut down ones, just the full length.
Jackson, you in a meme, just I don't watch Lord of the Rings all the time, but when I do, it takes a month.
One does not simply watch Lord of the Rings cut.
I love those memes.
That was like some of the first memes were those ones, weren't they?
Yeah.
Good times. I'd just
I
like to
miss
say
those days.
my generation brought you all that, so you're welcome.
Your generation.
Oh, maybe the one right above me. I guess
Yeah,
I'm not
probably the one right
millennial.
above you. Yeah.
The millennial
Okay.
generation.
According to Wiki, it is 11 hours and 23 minutes. But I think
Yeah,
what
Huh?
I'm getting at is the special features that come with the extended edition. So you got to watch
Oh,
all of the other stuff.
oh, do you watch all
Can't
the
watch just the
commentaries
movie.
and stuff?
Yeah, you got to rewatch it with the director's
watch
commentary, that kind of stuff.
commentary,
Okay,
the interviews,
I'm
the
not
behind the
insane.
scenes, the
Set Peter Jackson down in front of it and just say, okay, we're going to play it. And for the next 12 hours, you get to narrate. Uncut.
Oh, man.
Alternately, you tell them that you're going to be doing Lord of the Rings, and you sit them down, and it's Meet the Feebles.
Oh,
Never heard of
yeah,
that.
we're not talking that movie
I've
here.
never heard of that one. I can only imagine it spells disaster.
Oh, no.
Anyway.
Okay, before we
Are-
go down
Aren't we
this,
about out of time?
yeah, I think we're out of time. Before we go down that path, we're going to say good night, everybody. How did Yakko do it from Animaniacs? Just mwah. Good night, everybody.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, tell you what, if you survived in the comments up till now in our podcast, love to hear what movies you guys would recommend that are long run and worth your time. Be a fun watch. We'll add them to Jackson's list of have to watch movies.
Or comment which Shrek Retold clip was the best done.
There you go.
My opinion is probably the fight scene in the okay, I can't just say fight scene, the one where they're in Farquaad's court and someone like reanimated. They did 2D animation. That was pretty good, pretty funny. Anyway,
Well, yeah, all those things. Comment below. We'd love to see that, and we will promise if you put a comment before next week, we will talk about it next week. Until then, I'm John.
I'm
I'm
Mike.
Jackson.
I'm confused.
We knocked that one out of the park, guys. Have a good one. We'll talk to you all next week.